After the burial of Ptolemy XIII's body, the marriage ceremony of Cleopatra and her brother, who was also named Ptolemy, took place just a month after their father's death. One night, while Cleopatra was in her chamber, as darkness fell and night descended, the servants lit the lamps and brought them into the room. At that moment, a eunuch entered and said, "The 3 ministers of Egypt wish to meet the queen for an important matter." Cleopatra, who had now married her brother and officially held the title of Queen of Egypt, was widely referred to as the Queen. Since her ascension to the throne, the ministers of Egypt had never requested an audience with her after dark to discuss state affairs. When I heard that the ministers wished to meet with the queen, I started to leave the room. But Cleopatra said, "Charmion, where are you going? Stay here. No matter how important the minister's matter is, I do not consider you an outsider. You may stay and hear their statements." So I remained. The ministers entered, bowed before the Queen of Egypt, and lowered their heads almost to the ground. After rising, Cleopatra asked them, "What is this important matter that you have requested to meet me at this hour?" One of them, who was the eldest, glanced at me as if silently asking whether he could discuss state secrets in my presence. Cleopatra understood his look and said, "Charmion has been with me since childhood and is my confidant. You may say whatever you wish." The minister replied, "What I wish to say is a matter of utmost secrecy and should not reach anyone else's ears." The queen responded, "Charmion is my personal maid. She has been with me since childhood, and she is trustworthy. She never reveals secrets." The same minister said, "But Charmion is a woman, and the secret I am about to reveal is one that women often fail to keep." Cleopatra said, "I assure you that despite being a woman, Charmion will never betray your secret." The minister then said, "O Queen, since the day you married your husband, you have never once allowed him into your chamber. Every night your brother approaches your door wishing to enter, but you lock it from the inside. This is against tradition and law. If this continues, the people will be dissatisfied, for Egypt will lack an heir, and your brother will also be discontented because he cannot fulfill his role as your husband." Cleopatra replied, "Even though one reason should be enough to convince you, I will give you 2. First, I am Greek, and I see the marriage between a brother and sister as unnatural and barbaric. You are also Greek, so you should agree with me." The chief minister said, "By blood, we may be Greek, but as Egypt's ministers, we are Egyptian. In Egypt, the marriage between a brother and sister is not only permissible, but encouraged. As long as you have a brother who can be your husband, you should not marry an outsider. Your refusal to be with your brother has led some to believe that you may be physically defective or lack womanly desires." Cleopatra said, "You are mistaken. I do have womanly feelings, but my brother lacks manly qualities. If you can prove otherwise, I will agree to accept him in my chamber every night." At that moment, the door opened and Ptolemy, Cleopatra's brother and husband, entered. It was clear that the 3 ministers had arranged for him to arrive shortly after they began their discussion with the queen. Ptolemy said, "Cleopatra, you dare to say such things, because you know I dislike discussing this matter. I have never prided myself on being with a woman. But you, in full view of the city's people, rode in a litter with the Roman Antony, so that everyone could see his love for you. Even your maid Charmion, who stands here listening to our words, witnessed this, because whenever you rode with Antony, You took her along to fan the two of you." Cleopatra replied, "I admit that I went on outings with Antony, but no matter what, I am a woman and he is a man. If a man and a woman love each other, it is not a disgrace. But what do you say about the times you wandered around the city with that young German or that young Croat? No one in this city is unaware of your relationships with them." Ptolemy shouted, "That is a lie. You accuse me falsely because you seek to dethrone me." Cleopatra said, "I do not make false accusations. I am ready to prove my claim with witnesses." At that moment, Arsinoe, Cleopatra's younger sister, entered. It was clear that she too had been summoned to hear the discussion. Arsinoe asked, "What is going on?" "Why are you arguing?" Ptolemy said, "Your sister is accusing me of being reckless and frivolous." Arsinoe replied, "I know why Cleopatra is making these accusations. She wants to discredit us, seize the throne, and rule Egypt alone. If Rome were not in turmoil, Cleopatra would surely have seduced a Roman general like Antony and convinced him to invade Egypt, remove you from power, and place the crown on her own head." Cleopatra said, "Arsinoe, you are still a child, and it is strange to hear such words from you. Clearly, others have taught you to say them. That is why I am not offended, because I know you have been influenced." Ptolemy said, "These words solve nothing, Cleopatra. You still refuse to let me into your chamber. Every night when I come to your door, you lock it against me." Cleopatra replied, "You knew from the beginning that I would never let you into my chamber, yet you came anyway to use this as a pretext for conflict with me." Ptolemy asked, "Then what is to become of me?" Cleopatra answered, "You should stop coming to my chamber and accept that our relationship will not be that of a typical husband and wife, because my husband must be someone other than my brother." Ptolemy said, "I know that your eyes are set on Antony, and you are waiting for him to return so you can resume your relationship with that Roman. But he will not come back." Cleopatra responded, "Brother, you think I refuse you because of Antony. Whether he comes back or not, I will never accept you. I detest the idea that my brother should be my husband, or that someone who grew up with me from childhood should share my bed." "No, I do not accept this marriage," Ptolemy asked. "But would you accept sharing a bed with Antony?" Cleopatra replied, "My relationship with Antony is a friendship, but even if it were more than that, I would not consider it shameful, because Antony is neither my brother nor a foolish, frivolous man." The three ministers, Ptolemy and Arsinoe, left the room. After they had gone, Cleopatra turned to me and said, "Charmion, my heart tells me that Antony will come. I must say, my lady kept no secrets from me, and I knew she loved Antony. I will never forget the first time Cleopatra and Antony went on an outing together, and I accompanied them in the litter, fanning them." A group of slaves was carrying the palanquin. They wore uniform clothing which consisted of a purple loincloth embroidered with silver wire and shoes fastened with white straps. The straps spiraled around their calves, and they also wore a green sash that they used as a shoulder belt. During rest periods, they would untie the sash to dry their sweat. Leading the slaves carrying the palanquin was a court officer known as the Forerunner. His attire was similar to that of the slaves, except that instead of the sash, he wore a green sleeveless vest called a cliché, which left his arms bare. The Forerunner also wore an Egyptian hat with a drape that covered his neck, protecting it from the sun. He always carried a short wooden staff plated with gold, a symbol of his rank and position. When people saw the forerunner in the streets with his staff and distinctive clothing, they would step aside, and carts would move out of the way to allow the palanquin to pass without delay. Cleopatra would often move through the streets of Alexandria without an escort. Even on the day when she rode the palanquin with Antony for the first time to show him the city, she chose not to take an escort. Cleopatra not only knew the streets and buildings of Alexandria well, but she also had extensive knowledge of their history. At times, she would recount the historical background of the streets to Antony, who was astonished by how a young woman could possess so much knowledge and familiarity with her city. One of the first things that amazed Antony was the width of Alexandria's main streets, wide enough for 12 chariots to move side by side. After admiring the streets, Antony's attention was drawn to the water fountains and pipes, and he asked where the water flowing from the fountains came from. Cleopatra explained, "For 2.5 centuries, this city has had a water supply system. Water from the Nile flows into a large reservoir and is then distributed through pipes. Thus, the people always have access to water, and the public fountains along the streets are installed for everyone to use." Antony then asked, "Who built these streets and the water pipes?" Cleopatra replied, "The layout of this city was designed by Alexander the Great, but when he passed away, the city was still undeveloped. My great ancestor Ptolemy XIII began building and expanding the city. After him, my other ancestors constructed grand buildings, installed the water pipes, and created a sewage system. That's how the city has reached its current state." When they reached the museum, Antony was amazed by the grandeur of the building and its columns. He asked, "Who are these people sitting on the steps of this building and listening to the man speaking above them?" Cleopatra replied, "This is the museum named after the Muses, the goddesses of art. These people are philosophers, and the person speaking is their leader. They gather here daily to listen to the words of their master, the speaker." Antony asked, "What does philosopher mean?" Cleopatra responded, "A philosopher is someone who tries to solve the world's problems through discussion." Antony laughed and said, "The Roman people couldn't solve the world's problems with legions of soldiers. How do these people think they can solve them with words?" Cleopatra replied, "They believe that even if they cannot solve the world's problems with words, they will at least find explanations, and finding explanations will satisfy them." Antony asked, "Can anyone sit on these steps and listen to the master?" Cleopatra replied, "No. Sitting on these steps and listening to the teacher requires the approval of 2 philosophers or their students, who must confirm that the individual has a philosophical inclination. Of course, they must also be literate." Antony asked Cleopatra to stop the palanquin so he could listen to the teacher for a moment and understand what he was saying. The palanquin stopped, but Antony did not get off. The teacher, without paying any attention to Antony, as though he didn't see him, continued speaking. Antony overheard him talking about Plato and praising him as the ultimate intellect, but also suggesting that some of Plato's ideas needed to be adapted to the times. Cleopatra explained to Antony that all the philosophers who studied or taught at this museum were followers of Plato. They regarded him as the first teacher of humanity and the ultimate intellect. However, they believed that Plato's theories should be revised in accordance with modern times, That's why the teachers and students at this museum were known as Neoplatonists. They accepted Plato's ideas, but believed in modifying them to suit the present. Antony said we should leave because just as I didn't understand Plato, I don't understand these Neoplatonists either. Cleopatra ordered the slaves to move on. They continued their journey, and after passing the museum, Antony pointed to a large white building that resembled a circus from the outside and asked, "What is this place?" Cleopatra replied, "This is an institution that is unique in the world. There is nothing else like it." Antony asked, "Does this unique institution have a name?" Cleopatra said, "Yes, it is called the library." Antony asked, "What is the purpose of a library?" Cleopatra replied, "A library preserves the knowledge, sciences, and experiments of our ancestors and passes them on to their descendants. Thanks to libraries, the death of individuals does not mean the death of their knowledge and experiences. It is as if they remain alive, sharing their wisdom with future generations. A nation with a library never truly dies. The nations that perished and disappeared were those that lacked books and libraries." Antony said, "Then why is the Roman nation, which has no library, still alive and not perishing?" Cleopatra replied, "If you are patient, you will see that the Roman nation, due to its lack of a library, is gradually heading toward destruction. Would you like to step down and take a look inside the library?" Antony said, "I don't understand books enough to enter a library and look around." Cleopatra said, "If you had an interest in reading, I would take you inside this library and show you some extraordinary books. Here, there are books written on sheepskin with a thickness equal to the height of a human. Most of the books in this library are original copies and cannot be found anywhere else. 30 librarians take care of these books every day, ensuring that no dust settles on them. This exceptional library houses 150,000 books, and the knowledge of the world is gathered here. If one day this library were to be destroyed, the people of the world would become impoverished in terms of science and industry." Antony said, "That's enough talk about the library. It's better for us to move on and see another part of the city." After passing by the library, we walked through 2 grand streets which formed the commercial center of Alexandria, filled with renowned trading houses. Then we reached the quarter of the wine cellars. The taverns of Alexandria were concentrated in this district, and between them were houses from which the sound of women's laughter, musical instruments, and singing could be heard. Antony asked, "What is this place, and what are these sounds?" Cleopatra replied, "This is the wine cellars quarter and the district of public houses in Alexandria. All the courtesans of the city reside here. Some of the women stood in front of their homes, while others leaned out of their windows, gazing at passers-by and inviting them inside." Cleopatra continued, "My father and the kings of Egypt before him understood that a city as vast as Alexandria, the great port of the Roman Sea, which receives 50 ships daily, must have a designated place for entertainment. This ensures that drunkards and those seeking pleasure do not disturb the city's residents. That is why this district has been dedicated to recreation. All the taverns are located here, and all the women who are willing to provide temporary enjoyment for locals and travelers live here. In this district, everyone is free to drink and indulge in pleasure. But outside of it, no one is allowed to drink publicly or engage with women in an open manner." Antony said, "Cleopatra, I think you should rename this place the Paradise of the Gods, because nowhere else have I seen so many beautiful women gathered in one place." Cleopatra replied, "This district is famous throughout the eastern Mediterranean. People from Egypt, Syria, Greece, and other nearby countries know of it." Antony said, "I had no patience to listen to philosophers in the museum, and I am not the type of man to enter a library and read books. But with great pleasure, I will step down from this litter and enter these beautiful houses to meet their charming residents." Cleopatra warned, "Be careful of the gaze of these women and the enchanting effect of their caresses. Many wealthy and prominent men have entered this district and, having fallen in love, lost everything. Ashamed to return home, they chose to end their lives. Their bodies now rest in the lovers' cemetery, located in this very district. The cemetery is named after heartbroken lovers." Antony said they were fools who didn't understand that the love these women offered was nothing more than a business transaction. If a man is foolish enough to believe that a courtesan's affection is true love, then he deserves to lose everything and end up in ruin. After saying this, Antony stepped down from his litter to observe the people of this district up close. As time passed and he did not return, Cleopatra grew concerned and ordered the bearers to move forward and search for him. "We wandered the streets of the district for half an hour but did not see him. Cleopatra turned to me and said, 'Charmion, I believe our guest has fallen into the snare of one of these women's affections. Such a love is unworthy of a man like him. I never imagined that someone like Antony would be so weak-willed as to surrender himself to one of these women.' The entertainment district was a major source of revenue for the Egyptian king. Without it, Alexandria's economy and the royal treasury would suffer an irreplaceable loss. Alexandria was a world-renowned city, attracting visitors from all corners of the world. Many came not only to see the city, but specifically for its entertainment district. Most of the homeowners in the entertainment district were wealthy and did not depend on their properties for survival. But since they benefited greatly from them, they maintained these houses. Whenever they shut them down, they could easily move elsewhere and live comfortably. The brokers knew this, but also understood that the king of Egypt wanted the district to remain intact. If the entertainment district were closed, Ptolemy XIII would lose a massive revenue stream. In addition to the king, the merchants and workers of Alexandria, especially those in the harbor, supported keeping the district intact, as it attracted foreign travelers who contributed to the city's economy. The Lovers' Cemetery was a well-known site within the district. Foreign travelers who spent all their wealth here and fell into ruin, unable to remain in Egypt or return home, often chose suicide. Their bodies were buried in this cemetery, which might as well have been called the Cemetery of the Hopeless or the Cemetery of the Bankrupt. Alexandria's reputation was so vast that some travelers came solely to visit this cemetery. On each grave, the person's name, homeland, and the date of their suicide were inscribed. Nowhere, however, was it explicitly stated that they had died due to financial ruin, but everyone knew that was the case. The head of Alexandria's city guards once said, "The reputation of the Lovers' Cemetery must be preserved, and it should never become just another ordinary graveyard." This cemetery is not only a point of pride for Alexandria, but it also benefits travelers. Knowing of its existence, they bring extra money when visiting the city to avoid ending up among the lost souls buried here. He added, A traveler who spends all his wealth in the entertainment district and then kills himself is like a tree that has been uprooted. A person who cuts down a tree for a single harvest will only enjoy its fruit once. But if he lets the tree live, he will benefit from its fruit year after year. Likewise, travelers who spend all their money here and then end their lives bring us only temporary wealth. But if they keep some of their fortune, return home, rebuild their wealth, and come back in the future, Alexandria will continue to benefit from them. One day, I asked Cleopatra, "Do those who visit Alexandria ever return?" She replied, "Yes, Charmion. A traveler who experiences Alexandria never forgets this city. If he has the means, he will return to enjoy its pleasures again." In Rome and Greece, such indulgences exist, but they must be pursued in secrecy with constant fear and anxiety. But in Alexandria, and particularly in the entertainment district, an entire city of pleasure, travelers have complete freedom to do as they please, as long as they do not harm others. For some time, the women of the public houses in the entertainment district had gone on strike in protest, ceasing their work entirely. At this moment, Ptolemy conceived the idea of sending the slave women from the Egyptian royal palace to the entertainment district to replace the striking women. Had the king of Egypt carried out this idea, I too would have been forced, like the other slave women, to move to the entertainment district and reside there. However, Cleopatra intervened and prevented the royal palace's slave women from being transferred to the district. Cleopatra proposed that the women of the entertainment district be officially designated as workers of the king of Egypt, according to a tradition that had existed since the beginning of the reign of Ptolemy. Certain individuals were known as workers of the king of Egypt and enjoyed immunity. Even if they committed crimes, they could not be prosecuted without the king's or his representatives' consent. Those who enjoyed immunity in Egypt included all individuals serving in the royal court, the palace kitchens, and circus performers. If these individuals committed a crime, only the king himself had the authority to punish them. No one else could. Cleopatra suggested to her father that the women of the entertainment district be given the title of workers of the king of Egypt, so that they would have immunity and no one could harass them. The women agreed and resumed their work. However, this decision sparked protests from those who upheld religious traditions. They argued that Ptolemy XIII should not have granted these women the title of royal workers, as it was detrimental to the king's dignity. But Ptolemy paid no attention to their objections. The king knew very well that the revenue generated from the entertainment district and its public houses surpassed even the total tax revenue of all Egypt. Our wait had grown long, and there was still no sign of the tribute. Cleopatra was deep in thought. She turned to me and said, "Charmion, at the beginning of every love, there is curiosity. In most cases, curiosity is what compels a man to approach a woman. And if a man pursuing a woman discovers something new in her, he falls in love." I asked, "Oh, great lady, do you believe there are women in this district capable of captivating a man like Antony?" Cleopatra replied, "Yes, I do believe so. For in this district, there are women who are masters of the art of seduction. They can even enchant a priest, let alone a man like Antony." Just as Cleopatra finished speaking, Antony emerged from one of the houses and stepped into the street. It was clear that he intended to enter another house. But upon seeing Cleopatra's litter, he changed his mind and approached us. Cleopatra asked, "O Tribune, have you seen what you wish to see?" Antony responded, "Cleopatra, in Alexandria, I have seen a district more astonishing than the cities of fairies and sorcerers. When a man steps into one of these houses, he enters a world entirely different from the next, and his mind is left bewildered by the sheer beauty of the women here. I wonder how you, the women of Alexandria, tolerate such a perilous district in your city." Cleopatra asked, "Why do you consider this district dangerous?" Antony replied, "Because when the men of Alexandria visit this district and see these women, they cannot return home to live with their wives. Pleasure and indulgence in Alexandria are dangerous for the women of this city. I am astonished that your father does not order the dissolution of this place of vice." Cleopatra said, "Just as my ancestors did not dismantle this place of pleasure, neither will my father disturb the inhabitants of this district. For the revenue from this district alone equals the tax revenue of the entire kingdom of Egypt. Everyone calls Alexandria the bride of the world, and they say that whoever wishes to enjoy life for even 2 days must visit Alexandria and see this district. That is why the kings of Egypt have never sought to eliminate it, because nothing attracts travelers and tourists to Alexandria as much as this district." Antony asked Cleopatra, "If one day you, as the king's eldest child, were to rule Egypt and ascend the throne, would you preserve this district?" Cleopatra answered, "I would have to be mad not to. Why would I deprive myself of this immense revenue? If I ever become ruler, I will not only allow the district to continue its activities, but will also work to expand its revenue beyond Egypt. Until now, my ancestors and my father have not sought to officially promote this district abroad. They consider such an act beneath their dignity, believing that an official state-sponsored promotion of this district outside Egypt would damage their reputation. But I do not think that way. I believe efforts should be made to increase this district's income, for no gold mine can match its profitability. If necessary, its revenue can be used for greater purposes." As we left the entertainment district of Alexandria, Antony said, "I am very hungry, and the litter bearers are extremely exhausted. Otherwise, I would have asked Cleopatra to show me the lighthouse as well. Since we cannot visit it tonight, we will postpone it to another occasion." At no time in Egyptian history had the sons and daughters of a king enjoyed as much freedom as those of Ptolemy XIII. The king of Egypt never interfered in the affairs of his children. They could go wherever they wished and associate with whomever they desired. Whenever Cleopatra's father, Ptolemy XIII, was free from royal and state affairs, he would either take up one of his flutes and begin to play, or visit his lion house to check on his lion's well-being. Those who worked in Ptolemy XIII's lion house knew that stealing from the lion's rations or meat would result in severe punishment. Before Ptolemy XIII passed away, 2 lion keepers were caught stealing food and were thrown to the very beasts they had deprived. After returning to the palace, the tribune rested in his royal quarters adjacent to Cleopatra's chamber. I, as always, slept near my mistress. That night, I could not sleep for some time because Antony was speaking with Cleopatra. Upon entering Cleopatra's chamber, Antony approached a cage containing a pair of serpents, one male, one female. He remarked, I have seen nightingales kept in cages so they can sing, but I have never seen or heard of serpents being caged and placed in one's own chamber. Cleopatra responded, "Admit that this pair of serpents with their elegant markings are more beautiful than any nightingale." Have you ever seen a painting with patterns as exquisite as these? Antony said, "Cleopatra, I came here intending to speak with you about love, but after seeing these creatures and hearing your words, I fear even mentioning the word love. You captivate me with your beauty and intelligence, but I am afraid of your venom." Cleopatra asked, "Why do you think I am venomous?" Antony replied, "I do not mean literal poison. I am referring to your formidable nature. Every time I try to approach you, I hesitate because of your powerful presence. One of the most terrifying things about you is your fondness for serpents. Why keep them? Were there no other creatures to admire?" Cleopatra responded, "Is keeping serpents stranger than keeping lions? My father keeps lions and has made their care a royal tradition, yet no one questions him. But you question me for keeping serpents." Antony said lions are different from serpents. "That is why we also keep and train lions in Rome. Lions symbolize courage and nobility, while serpents evoke only fear and revulsion." Cleopatra replied, "I have loved serpents since childhood. Their graceful movements fascinate me." Antony sighed. Cleopatra said, "Every time I see them ceaselessly coiling and twisting in their cage, I forget what I wanted to say to you." Cleopatra said, "Turn your back on the cage, so you won't see them." Antony replied, "Cleopatra, you know that I love you deeply, and I expect you to let me have you. The best time for me to be with you is now, when we are alone in this room. Let's forget everything else for a while and think only of ourselves." Cleopatra said, "Antony, if I did not love you, I wouldn't have invited you and let you into this room. Your presence here is proof that I care for you, but I do not want to surrender myself to you like one of the women from the entertainment districts of Alexandria. My ancestors were kings, and I cannot give myself away so easily." Antony replied, "When a man and a woman love each other, there is only one way for them to be together. All the queens of Egypt have followed that same path to love." Cleopatra said, "You misunderstand me. What I meant was that anyone who wishes to be with me must first become my brother, meaning he must marry me and become my husband." Again, Antony asked, "Cleopatra, do you think your father would agree to let me become your brother?" Cleopatra said, "If you can prove to my father that you are a distinguished man, he will agree." Antony replied, "That would take time. I need to build a reputation before your father will approve of us becoming brother and sister." Cleopatra said, "Alexander, who founded this city, gained fame within 2 years of leaving Macedonia. You could also earn recognition within 2 or 3 years, or perhaps longer." And he said, "There's no guarantee that I can achieve fame in 2 or 3 years. Even if I knew I would become famous, I do not have the patience to wait 3 years to be with you." Cleopatra asked, "Do you think that in a few years either of us will grow old?" "We are both young, and we can wait. When we are finally together, it will be even more enjoyable. After all, no reward is truly satisfying unless one has worked for it." And he said, "I have another fear that your father might marry you off before then." Cleopatra reassured him, "I will not marry anyone." And he countered, "If your father decides to arrange your marriage, you won't be able to refuse." Cleopatra asked, "Why not?" Antony explained, "Because you are a princess." Cleopatra asked, "Is a princess forced to marry?" And he said, "A common girl can refuse to marry someone she doesn't love. But a princess must marry according to her father's will, even if she dislikes her husband. Royal daughters are wed based on political interests, not personal choice. Haven't many Egyptian princesses been married off to Syrian or Persian princes, even when they despised them? But politics demanded that an Egyptian princess marry a foreign prince." Cleopatra confidently replied, "I am certain that my father will not marry me off to a foreign prince." Antony asked, "How can you be so sure?" Cleopatra explained, "My father believes that I am very beautiful and intelligent. He thinks that such a gifted daughter should not be given to a foreign prince, taking her out of our royal lineage. Instead, he plans to marry me to my brother, so that my beauty and intelligence remain within the royal family and are passed down to future generations." Antony objected, "But your brother is too young. He cannot marry you." Cleopatra said, "My father will wait until he grows up, and then he will unite us." And he asked, "Do you love your brother?" Cleopatra replied, "He is just a boy. I cannot love him as a man, but I can already foresee that I will never love him." Stay tuned for the next episodes of Cleopatra's Mysterious Life. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any exciting parts.